In this video we will demonstrate how to generate your probate forms. Before we start, do not forget, you can use web chat to get access to our helpful team, who are on hand to help you with any queries you may have. Before you generate the probate forms, you will have already entered information about the deceased here. Such information is required to determine the marital status of the deceased, the date of death, the deceased's address and whether a will was left, and if so how many executors and beneficiaries. This is required to determine and populate which forms should be used. It will also determine what exemptions to the estate may apply. Once this information has been captured, the following tile, Key People, is activated. Depending on what was answered about the deceased in the previous section, you would have been prompted for the following: the spouse of the deceased if married or widowed, details of the executors and beneficiaries. This information is required for the forms and any exemptions that apply. In this tile you've entered what assets and liabilities were owned by the deceased, how they were held and the value at date of death. If any of the listed assets were left to a specific beneficiary, you would have assigned the asset here to that person. If the deceased was widowed and their estate is over the inheritance tax threshold, Inland Revenue allow you to transfer any unused allowance from the predeceased spouse. Once you have entered the relevant information, you will be ready to generate and view your probate forms. You can always amend, delete or add further information into the tiles at any time and rerun the probate forms. The system will do this automatically. Click here to view your probate forms. Please be patient as the system may take a few minutes to generate them. Now, your probate forms are generated. To work out what you do with the probate forms, then click here. You will now be presented with the following page. You will either be presented with a PA1 and IHT 205 forms or PA1 form and IHT 400 forms. Read the following section to get an idea of what steps are required and additional documentation needed when submitting the probate application. To return to the probate forms, then click here. Now we will look at the PA1 form. The PA1 form collects information about the deceased, family members and whether a will was left or not. Check for errors and make any necessary amends through the Control Hub. In this example, the system has generated the IHT 205 form. If there was a deceased spouse and predeceased spouse exemption is needed, then the IHT 217 will also appear here. Again, click on the link to generate the form. There are some rules that will determine which set of probate forms to use. If the gross value of the estate does not exceed £1 million or the net value of the estate does not exceed the nil rate band after any spouse or charity exemptions, then the IHT 205 will be generated. If the net value of the estate exceeds the nil rate band and there was a predeceased spouse whose own estate had not used any of their nil rate band, then this will be used to offset any potential inheritance tax. If there is no tax to pay, then the IHT 205 forms will be generated. If the net value of the estate falls beneath the nil rate band after any exemptions or transfer of unused nil rate band from a predeceased spouse, then you will see the IHT 205 forms. There are other rules around insurance premiums, pensions and gifts made that can also affect which probate forms are generated. Our system will make help select them for you. If you are presented with IHT 400 forms, then you will need to apply for a probate reference number. This number is required for the IHT 400 forms and will be used as an account to settle any inheritance tax that may be due. To apply for an IHT reference number, click here. You will be taken to the gov.co.uk site where you enter the following details and apply for the IHT reference number. Once you have obtained your IHT reference number, then enter here and submit. The forms will now be populated with the IHT reference number you have entered. So now you are ready to download and view your probate forms. We shall now look at the IHT 400 form. You will be presented with the IHT 400 form. It is quite a lengthy form. Please check the form for any discrepancies. If changes need to be made, then go back to where you entered the information initially and make the amends there. The system will update the changes for when you next generate the forms. As the system has generated the IHT 400 forms, you will see that there is a probate form for each asset type, for example property, bank accounts and pensions. The total summed value of each type of asset after any exemptions are applied will be done within each of these specialist forms. The total summed values will then be presented into the IHT 400 forms. Exemptions and reliefs are really important in reducing the net probate value that will not be exempt from inheritance tax. The system will calculate this all for you. Print off the probate forms and send your application to your local probate registry and make the application fee of £215. You will in turn need to swear an oath, and then the grant will be issued in your name if you are the executor or personal representative. On the grant will be the date the grant was issued. Enter the date here and you have completed the apply for probate stage. Now you are ready to administer the estate, liquidate the assets, pay liabilities and pay beneficiaries.